This conference will now be recorded. This
This
conference will now be recorded.
is Director Scott Houston calling the meeting to order. We do have members of the committee present. It sounds like all 5 directors are present, so we have a quorum. And let's see, first item is there any public comment, Patrick?
No, we do not have any public comment.
Okay, next would be presentations.
We have no presentations.
Okay, we'll move on to the action calendar, item 5A.
Yeah. So good afternoon, Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board and the public. We have one action item today, very exciting one, I think. And this is although we didn't have any presentations earlier, we will have a presentation on this one from Kim Brown from the city of Culver City. But this pertains to a project that was submitted to as part of MET's pilot program. It's a pilot program essentially to capture stormwater and put it back into direct public use or direct use in the ground. And it sort of came to us through our Measure W participation, and we co-submitted with the city of Culver City on this item, which is for about $500,000 out of a total project cost of $14,000 to build this project. So we have a couple of components to the presentation. I'm going to let EJ lead it off, and then Ms. Brown can give her presentation, and Craig Cadwallader would like to comment at the end when you're done, EJ.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board. Today, I'm very excited to launch or initiate this action item. As you probably know, back in September 2019, the MWD board approved $5 million to initiate a program to study the direct use of on-site stormwater capture. This was followed by the launch of a pilot program in January of 2020. The program was the Stormwater for Direct Use, which is a pilot program. Again, funded with $5 million. West Basin's activities in relation to the Watershed Area Steering Committee, part of the Measure W process, identified a couple of potential projects that we thought might work within this pilot program, and we reached out to the city of Culver City as one part of that effort. In looking at the program, it looked like a great fit. The city of Culver City staff was excited, I think, to participate and has done an excellent job working with West Basin as well as Metropolitan Water District to formulate the program and submit it to the pilot program. While the board memo does, I think, provide an excellent overview of the project itself, I thought that there would be nobody better to talk about the project than Culver City. So today we have Kim Braun, Culver City staff, joining us, and she will be providing an overview presentation of the project itself, and then I'll wrap up the action item before you with a staff recommendation. So Kim, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, EJ. Good afternoon, members of the board and the committee. I'm very happy to be a part of this pilot program with the Metropolitan Water District and also West Basin. Very exciting for us. So I would like to just tell you a little bit about what the Culver Boulevard stormwater filtration, retention, and road media alignment is really all about. So next slide, please. Great, thank you. Well, a long time ago, the Public Works Department with the city of Culver City received funding to realign actually Culver Boulevard. And if you're not really familiar with Culver City, there's Culver Boulevard, and then there's also Culver Boulevard North, or what we call Little Culver Boulevard. And there is a median that runs right into the middle of that, separating the two roadways. Okay. So anyway, The project originally started out by wanting to push that median just north by about 15 to 20 feet so they could widen Big Culver Boulevard to give access to our residents of more safer parking on the south side. As a result of that project coming into fruition, the city also realized that this might be a great opportunity for us to put in a stormwater project, which would allow us to start becoming compliant with our MS4 permits and, of course, the Ballona Creek Enhanced Watershed Management Plan. Next slide, please. So the Ballona Creek watershed itself consists of 128 square miles of drainage area. So under dry weather conditions, we have to address bacteria loads in the water. And with wet weather conditions, we have to address metal pollutants in the stormwater. The total maximum daily loads that we have to try to reduce in accordance with our permit are for metals, bacteria, trash, and toxic sediments. Okay, we have to do this in accordance with our MS4 permit by 2021. Next slide, please. So what are the objectives of this project? Well, we want to address our commitment to implementing what is in the Enhanced Watershed Management Plan for Ballona Creek. We're diverting the stormwater and urban runoff from the storm drains prior to it being redischarged into Ballona Creek, and we're identifying beneficial uses. So we want to integrate the stormwater capture project with the proposed road realignment project. And then we want to engage our local stakeholders and obtain local community support, which we did. And of course, in order to do a project of this size, we had to actively pursue funding partners to implement the project. Next slide, please. So the first thing we did was we wanted to seek a project partner. And as we go on into the presentation, you'll learn that a lot of the stormwater drainage actually comes from the city of Los Angeles, in addition to Culver City. So we applied for a grant, 2 grants actually, Prop 1 and Prop 84. And the city of Los Angeles was originally going to be a project partner with us on this project. But what happened was later on down the road, when we received some of the funding, City of Los Angeles determined, and this was prior to the LA County Measure W funding, that there wasn't enough funds available to be able to participate. So now we were looking for another project partner, and we had a really great concept. And it's unprecedented because it's never been done before, at least in our region. And that's called a Stormwater Compliance Credit Program. So the Ballona Creek Watershed Plan includes partners such as City of Los Angeles, County of Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, Inglewood, West Hollywood, Santa Monica. So we went to the City of Beverly Hills and actually asked them if they wanted to participate in place of the City of Los Angeles and see whether or not they may be able to get compliance credits for their stormwater responsibilities, even though their water isn't really draining into these storm drains. However, the benefit is to the entire watershed, not just Culver City or the City of Los Angeles. So we wrote a letter to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for approval, and we developed a letter of intent and a MOU with the City of Beverly Hills. Next slide, please. Well, we're very excited to say that for the very first time, the Region Board gave us approval to be able to allow Beverly Hills to participate and contribute funding towards this project. So we received the approval in May of 2018. We worked along with Beverly Hills, and just last Tuesday, Beverly Hills signed the MOU with the City of Culver City, and they will be contributing $3.5 million towards this $15 million project. Next slide, please. So here's an actual photo of the drainage area. As you can see, there's 796 acres of water that drains in this area. From Sepulveda Boulevard storm drain, there's approximately 641 acres of stormwater drainage, and Harder Avenue has 155 acres. And Harder is actually right off of Big Culver Boulevard. Culver City's total drainage area for the project is 297 acres, and Caltrans actually has a small portion at 22 acres. Next slide, please. So I hope you can see this, but this is in stormwater lingo, drainage area and actual volume captured in acre feet. So Harder Avenue has 155 acres of drainage, of which all is in Culver City. And Culver City's water capture volume at acre feet is 6.04. Sepulveda Boulevard drainage area is actually 641 acres, of which 142 belongs to Culver City and 477 acres belong to the city of Los Angeles and 22 at Caltrans, with that water capture being 31.60 acre feet and Culver City 7. So the total water volume captured for the city of Culver City is 13.05 acre feet. Next slide, please. So the project design and approach, we'll go to the next slide. There's key components. Once the median has been lifted, which it has, because we are about 34% of construction completed already, the components of the design consist of a diversion system, a pre-treatment facility, the storage chambers, reservoirs. As you can see, I hope you can see them. They look almost like little Lego blocks that are all put together, and then filtration units. Next slide, please. Okay, and I know this is a pretty complicated slide, but it's just trying to show you actually the size of the water that's going to be treated and stored under the Culver Boulevard median. And if you see, there's two chambers there. We listened to our community. We had long discussions about the median and the existing trees and what we could replace and what had to remain. So we did the best we can to keep most of the trees for the project. Next slide, please. And this is like an underground elevation. So you can see on the very left side, there's the storm drain. That's the diversion. And then it gets pumped into the pre-treatment tanks, which are next. Then there is the settling area to catch any other large sediments that can't go through. And then we have the storage chamber, which is quite large. And then there's the pump of the water during wet weather, if there's an overflow, and to treat it to go back into the existing storm drain at the other end. So it's a quite simple process, actually, although it's very complicated when you're doing the design and engineering. Next slide, please. And again, this is what it would look like if you're driving on Sepulveda Boulevard. You'll see the diversion system where the storm drain is. It leads into that storm drain under Sepulveda, into the pre-treatment units, down into the storage facility, and then it runs into a couple other pump stations and the filtration, back through into Harder, and then back out. But we also have, which makes this a prime candidate, and we're very glad that we were invited to participate, the water that we are storing is currently going to irrigate the entire median. So we're very happy about that, and especially during the dry weather, it'll really help us. And that's what makes it really a good candidate for this partnership, because Metropolitan Water wants to have this project capture a lot of data for them, which we're glad to do. And they've given us funding to be able to put in the proper monitoring equipment so we can determine how much volume we're capturing and how much is being reused. Next slide, please. And here's just some photos of our current construction. As I said, we're about 34% complete with the stormwater project. So, and the hole is really deep. So if you ever get a chance, if you live on the west side or just want to take a drive by, you can look through. There's a couple crossways in between there where you can actually see what's going on. And there's the stormwater BMPs in case it rains. This is going into the actual storm drain, I believe, on Harder. And this one may be on Sepulveda, where they're starting to put in the diversion units to capture that stormwater to take it to the treatment facilities. Next, please. So as stated before, in January of this past year, West Basin contacted us about the Metro pilot project. And, you know, we thought, hey, this is a great idea. Why not? So Metropolitan and West Basin on our behalf submitted our application, and we were awarded $500,000 to be able to participate in the pilot project. And the funds will help pay for the equipment to irrigate the median, data collection, the monitoring of the water quality, the volume of water used, and of course, a portion to get ready for phase 2 of the Culver Stormwater Project. What that means is that, next slide, please. In a few years, Culver Boulevard phase 2, we're going to construct connections from our chamber under the median to irrigate parts of our Veterans Park. So that will also hopefully be part of a monitoring program with Metropolitan Water and West Basin. So very exciting. Next slide, please. Then once everything's constructed and we're putting a median back, we have some great things to talk about here. The community was 100% involved in helping design this portion of the project. So they were involved with selecting the plantings and the types of retaining walls and the bike pathway and the walking pathway. Next slide, please. And as you can see, we're going to have a nice seating area. We have our signature tree that remained. We're going to have a lot of signage, and I'm very excited to also tell you that part of one of the grants that we've received from the state requires an outreach education portion. And what's exciting about this is that we're going to have an augmented reality education session. And we're dividing that median up into 4 gateways, we call them. And at each gateway, you can scan either a sign or some relic or something significant to that gateway. And once you scan it with your phone and the QVC code pops up, you're going to be able to see a 3D photo of everything that we sort of showed you now that's going on underneath the median. And then, of course, other gateways have mobility and bicycle and pedestrian safety education. And then there's a little history about Culver City at the gateway entrance on Sepulveda, the whole 3D augmentation of the stormwater project that you're standing on top of that you'll never see because it's all filled up with beautiful foliage and walkways, and now you get to see it. And then, of course, a little bit about the Ballona Creek and its historical significance to our area and the habitat and wildlife and species that survive in the creek at this time. Next slide, please. Just another overview of what that will look like. The next slide, please. And then, of course, the purpose originally was to realign Big Culver Boulevard so the residents that are on the south side can now park without having and get out of their vehicle without having to wait for all of the traffic to go by because there wasn't enough room to open up your driver door to get out of your car. So they're going to have a beautiful parking area. We're going to put bioswales and a few other rain gardens along the public right-of-ways there. So we're very excited about that as well. Next slide, please. And that's it. So once again, I thank you very much for allowing Culver City to present, and I thank you very much for considering the partnership with us. We're very excited about this, and you know what we should do, and I just thought about it, and I probably will make sure this gets done, is that we'll also, in our education outreach portion of our augmented reality scans, include the monitoring pilot program as a part of it to let the community know and our visitors know about what we're doing with monitoring the reuse of the water. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. And I'll open up the floor in case any of the directors have any questions about the project itself.
Sure. This is the chair. So thank you, Kim, by the way. Wonderful presentation. Any colleagues have questions at this time? Questions or comments thus far? Okay. I'll probably wait for another minute or two till EJ finishes the full presentation, but I do have, of course, some comments, Kim. You know, let's let EJ finish this portion. That'd be great. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Houston. So the actual reason this item is coming before you is because we are here to discuss an agreement for inclusion in MWD's Stormwater for Direct Use pilot program, which would be an agreement by and between West Basin Municipal Water District, the City of Culver City, and of course, Metropolitan Water District. As you might recall, prior to submitting an application, the West Basin Board of Directors did approve a letter of support for this specific project. And since then, West Basin staff has worked with MWD until the award of the program. And finally, West Basin staff, along with Culver City staff and Metropolitan Water District staff, has been working to conclude the wrap-up of an agreement between the three parties so that we can identify exactly the roles of each of the parties. So we do have for you, as I believe it's Exhibit A draft of the agreement. I do believe that there are some minor details to still be filled in because it does require an act by the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors. So you can see just right there, the agreement number is still not included. And I think that there's just a few minor details, but nothing of substance. Under the terms of the agreement, West Basin staff shall serve as one of three agreement administrators, along with Metropolitan Water District and the City of Culver City. The city will be responsible for producing all reports and invoices and submitting them to West Basin. Once received, West Basin shall submit all reports and invoices to Metropolitan Water District. And we've been discussing this collectively to make sure that there's overlap. So for instance, when the city provides us with the materials, they're going to copy Metropolitan Water District. We do anticipate that the project proponent or Culver City will be doing the bulk of the work, but we'll be administering it and making sure that Metropolitan Water District gets the information that they need. Once all invoices have been submitted to Metropolitan Water District and they've been identified as eligible project costs, Metropolitan Water District shall pay West Basin by means of a credit on the next monthly water service invoice. And I want to be very clear about that. So once Culver City submits it to us and we send it to Metropolitan Water District, Metropolitan Water District will review it. And once authorized, there will be no payment from Metropolitan Water District. They will simply provide us a credit on our next monthly bill. And then once that credit is realized, that's when West Basin Municipal Water District would reimburse Culver City for their activities. We do anticipate that this item will be finalized by the three parties shortly. The reason we're bringing it before you today is because I believe that the City of Culver City and West Basin Municipal Water District must approve the agreement prior to Metropolitan Water District approving it. So we're trying to get this done in order for Metropolitan Water District to wrap this up no later than December, I believe at the latest. So with that, staff does have a recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Metropolitan Water District and the City of Culver City for inclusion in the Stormwater for Direct Use pilot program. And with that, Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. I don't have a question at this exact moment, but Patrick, did I hear that Craig Cadwallader wanted to say something.
That's correct, Chairman Houston. Craig, this would be a perfect time for you to weigh in. Craig, can you hear us? I see he's got his mic unmuted. Now it's muted. It seems to be having a little bit of connectivity issues. Kim,
Okay,
that was
well,
a wonderful presentation, by the way.
well,
Thank you.
in the meantime, Craig, if you can eventually chime in, let us know when you might be able to talk. But I'll go ahead and just start. So first of all, do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments one last time?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment. Harold
Director
Williams
Williams.
here.
Harold Williams.
All right, well, thank you. This project is so wonderful. It's a great opportunity for the community to see how public works, civil engineering, and environmental engineering all comes together to do what needs to be done for the city. And I'm just excited about it. And I know my good friend and colleague, Charles Herbison, the Public Works Director, City Engineer, loves this project. And he talks about it a lot. So thank you very much for all your work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Williams. Let's do this. Any other board members? And then I see Craig came back. Any other directors, comments, questions?
Chair, I do have some comments. I can wait until Craig speaks, or I can speak now.
Okay. Well, why don't you go now, Director Gray, President Gray?
All right, thank you. Thank you. I want to echo the same feeling. I think this is a great project, and I'm very pleased that MWD did approve a program that involves stormwater that really has to do with looking at the benefit of stormwater related to water supply yield. And I believe I read that this particular project will replace about 20 million acre feet of water per year, which is whatever number of acre feet of water in terms of imported water we can replace. It's a wonderful thing to do. And I know that the project was approved as part of MWD's pilot program. So I totally endorse this project. I look forward to more projects. Um, um, there was something else I wanted to mention. Oh, I know. It really is no direct cost to us because it really isn't. It's funded through Metropolitan. So I really don't see any reason why we would not enter into an agreement. I would like to make sure that the agreement is what it should be. And I did hear EJ said that they're looking at it. And so I'm sure the general manager and our general counsel will make sure that everything is what it should be with the agreement. But I totally support it. Look forward to looking at more projects in our service area related to this. I think stormwater is an area that we should continue to look at for future projects. And I thank the presenter this morning for explaining it very well. It was the way she presented it was something that we could fully understand and appreciate. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, President Gray. Director Kwan, did you have any comment or question?
No. It's wonderful that we have, the project moving forward, and I wish everything goes smoothly with the project. All right, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Director Deere?
Sounds like a good project.
Okay, very well. Craig Cadwallader, you're back. Are you able to chime in? You had to comment? Craig? Oh, he's muted. All right, well, Kim, without suspense, I'm going to say my comments at this moment. I just want to, well, I missed the one thing, I think. When is the project going to be completed? What was the date approximately?
Yes, approximately the entire project should be completed by the end of September or October 2021.
Nice. Okay, so it's moving along very quickly. I do know that. I drive through Culver City very regularly, so I've seen all the work. And I know I'd even asked our staff, hey, can you guys give me an update on that? So when this came forward, I was very excited. and I still am very excited. And to see the drawings and the schematics, really brings it together. But, you guys, I think you've done a great job, obviously pulling all these partners together, which is, that's quite phenomenal. So one of the things that I would love to see as the project moves forward is how the partners can all make sure they get that information out to the communities, especially the fact that this is such a unique project, right? You've got the city of Beverly Hills even participating, which was news to me. I think that's fabulous. So my one wish or request to staff is to work with, all these partners. So it's Metropolitan, West Basin, Culver City, and Beverly Hills as to how we, give updates, reports, etc., to the respective communities and boards or councils. And then, of course, when this all comes together, how those announcements are also made, once it's completed. Those would be my main requests, because I think, especially with Beverly Hills, being that they are, a little ways to your north, but at the same time putting in significant funds and it's benefiting them in this way, that they obviously deserve credit to be a helping participant here. And they also, of course, work with us as a Met member agency right next door in the city of West Hollywood and provide water to some of our residents. So, the only other request I would also have for staff would be if you guys could please send me a printed copy of that presentation. I know we got an email, but I'd love to have a printout of it. And I think one thing I noticed, I didn't read the whole package, but EJ, I did see that our attorney's last name is misspelled on the document, so you guys need to make sure that you check that out. And let me see if there's any other questions or comments. And by the way, I see, go ahead, Director Gray, and I see that Craig was commenting something in our chat box. He said he's having technical difficulties. Okay, hold on. He said he's having technical difficulties again, but he fully supports the project. So that was from Craig Cadwallader. So yes, President Gloria Gray.
Thank you very much. I just had one question. I know that West Basin gets a credit when all this is done. Is there an estimate for the amount of credit we would get to reduce our water bill? EJ or Patrick, anyone who has an estimate of what 20 acre feet may be?
Yeah, yes, President Gray. The way it works is that as the city of Culver City and their contractors produce invoices with costs and paid costs that are eligible for reimbursement, that ultimately, there we go. That ultimately becomes the amount of the credit. So the credit is not based off of per acre foot. It's based off of eligible costs paid for by Culver City. So once they produce the invoices for the work that's been completed, which does include all construction costs, then of course we would submit that to Metropolitan Water District, and then of course they would issue the credit. Does that answer your question?
Is that a dollar amount credit? I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes, it would be. So for instance, if in the first invoice produced by Culver City, there was a $200,000 authorized expenditure for construction, we would submit that to Metropolitan Water District, and then we would receive a $200,000 credit on our next Metropolitan Water District invoice. So our total amount to be paid would be based off of that.
Okay. I think I mistakenly said 20 million acre feet per year, but it's 20 acre feet per year. But based on that projected amount, what would be the 20 acre feet? Am I asking you something you can answer, or EJ?
Well, I think maybe I didn't explain it very clearly, but the reimbursement amount is not based on the acre footage at all. Okay. The acre footage does help with the competitiveness of the application and the process. So of course, that's what they're looking for, is the direct use of that stormwater. But in this case, Metropolitan Water District pilot program identifies eligible costs to be reimbursed up to $500,000.
Oh, I got it now. Okay, now I understand. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair
Thank you.
Houston. Thank you, EJ.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much. Let me just see. Okay, just checking the chat box. All right, you guys. I want to just say, I'm gonna wrap this one up. Again, Kim, thank you so much. Great presentation and an update for all of us here at West Basin. You can hear that we're all very proud of this project. I'm also glad that you guys were one of the first in the queue when we got this funding opportunity, and when staff brought it to us, it was very exciting. So we jumped on it, and I know the city of Culver City has been a great partner as always. So, and being a representative, of course, it makes me very proud. So all that being said, I would move this forward to the board with the recommendation of approval. If Member Gray, do you concur?
I concur, and I just want to say thank you to the staff. You did mention that, Chair Houston. Thank you to the staff for even making sure that this project was first in the queue for approval. Very important project, but thanks to your effort, it was approved. So again, thank you so much to staff.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you again, Kim. Please give our regards to everybody in Culver City and your wonderful public works staff. And any way we can be of assistance, we're here for you.
Great, thank you very much. Everyone have a good afternoon, and I want to thank my staff, Lee Swain and Chanel Kincaid, for joining in today. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next item, Patrick, our information calendar.
Yes, Chairman Houston, we have 4 items on the information calendar. The first item is related to the urban water management plan. This is an oral update, but basically the California Water Code requires that we prepare every 5 years an urban water supply plan to support our long-term resource planning and ensure we have adequate water supplies both now and in the future. And we'll be coming back to the board shortly with an action item on the selection of a consultant to perform this work, which is, like I said, required by the Water Code every 5 years. So, EJ?
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick. Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board. As Patrick mentioned, the Urban Water Management Plan is due in this next summer. So West Basin staff is working to interview and identify a potential consultant to assist us in the preparation of that document. This is the primary planning tool that water agencies utilize for their next 5 years. So we're excited as it's going to take into account a lot of new aspects of the region, including some of the activities of Metropolitan Water District, but also the adjudicated groundwater rules within the West Coast Basin. So we think that this will be a very valuable tool in the future. As Patrick mentioned, we hope to have these interviews done and completed by this week, with a staff recommendation coming possibly before the board meeting in this month. So we'll keep the Office of the General Manager apprised on that. And it's worth noting, because I know that a lot of people have questions about how this document is produced, but it's very important to note that the document will be produced alongside Metropolitan Water Districts. So we've been coordinating with their efforts and attending all of their planning meetings. And then, of course, we'll be coordinating our effort with all of the West Basin retailers within the West Basin service area, as well as the Water Replenishment District. So we can really identify not just the demand from the West Basin service area and for our retailers, but also the eligible or available water supply. So we'll be bringing that possibly for action at the end of this month.
Okay, very good. Any questions for EJ on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll move to part B, which is our legislative update. Patrick.
Yeah, Chairman, we have a document that you should have received just late before the meeting today from our Van Scoyk and Associates, our DC lobbyists, with the very latest and greatest. So that should be in your email. So this is our typical ledge update from both state and Fed. So EJ?
Yes, thank you again, Patrick, for the introduction. Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board. Let me first begin by apologizing for the lateness of that Van Scoyoc and Associates report. I did receive it last week and failed to submit it, so I really do apologize for overlooking it, but I'm happy that we have it for you today. And I'll walk through that report so you have an opportunity to ask any questions. As always, we do try to provide timely reports. We do include the Nemel Pappas and Associates report here for you for the activities that took place in this past month. And I think that one of the things that I really liked about this report is it does provide a pretty good overview of just the complexities and actually the circumstances in which the California State Legislature went through a legislative session like no other. And I know you've heard me mention that before, but it really is important to talk about not just the COVID-19 crisis, but also natural disasters, social unrest. There's been quite a bit happening this year in 2020, and I know that we all joke about it, but when you look at our governing bodies, as you are, it's very difficult. And I think that our elected leaders, local, state, and federal, really need to be applauded for all of their efforts. So when you look at this report, I think that the first paragraph highlights one of Governor Newsom's steps as far as talking about climate resiliency and climate change. Obviously, with record-breaking fires throughout the state of California, he really is trying to take a leadership role. And you saw, I think, a very interesting press conference that he did hold with our president, Donald Trump, but also his staff there, Wade Crowfoot, really pointing out some of the concerns that the California leadership has. On September 23rd, the governor did issue a landmark executive order to establish the goal of the state to have 100% of the state's new passenger cars be zero emissions by 2035. Obviously, when we do these things, it is a significant goal. Some would call it a reach goal, but you've really seen California make a lot of progress in incentivizing these zero emission cars. I also wanted to point out, although it's not in the board memo, that just earlier this month, Governor Newsom also made a new executive order stating that it was the California's goal to preserve a significant portion of its lands and waters for just conservation and preserving California. And that really does put California in what I would call a leadership role on the national level when we talk about environmentalism and really trying to reduce carbon emission and preserve the environment. But what you had this year was the California State Legislature taking an extended 2-month-long recess due to several staff members as well as several legislators contracting the COVID-19 disease or virus. As part of this effort, you saw a significant reduction in bill packages that most legislators were bringing forward. You can see there in paragraph 3 that there were significant issues that were rejected throughout the legislative year, and some of them were very important to our local region. You saw they rejected allowing homeowners to request a forbearance on their mortgages during the pandemic, launching the state's own Green New Deal to fight climate change. Additionally, most all major housing bills stalled despite Oakland Assemblywoman Buffy Wick's return to Sacramento to cast her vote for a major housing permitting bill that was authored by the Pro Tem. And when you look at the West Basin service area, these housing bills have been very controversial, not just in the South Bay region, but up in Culver City as well, as people want to tackle this housing issue specifically. But the question is, how do you go about doing it? The governor did veto legislation creating a statewide office to end homelessness. And then I think when you look at this year, nothing can really define it like you'll see in this chart at the bottom of packet page 44 and the top of packet page 45. You know, on a typical year, and using last year as an example, there was approximately 1,200 bills sent to the governor's desk. This year, there was 428. And I mean, I've never seen anything like that. Signed into law, there were 372, vetoed 56, so slightly less, you know, as far as percentile. But when you talk about how few bills passed through the legislature, this year, I think is it's something that will likely never happen and hopefully never happen again. In moving forward, I know West Basin staff has been working with several different stakeholders, including Water Reuse California and the Association of California Water Agencies, to identify potential bills that will be introduced or possibly reintroduced in the next legislative session. Resiliency bonds are definitely a big part of that. Typically, when the legislature fails to act, you see outside stakeholders begin to circulate petitions and possibly get them on the ballot through other means outside of legislation. And that usually stirs kind of some activity within the California state legislature as to, okay, well, if we're going to shape this, how can we shape it? And so West Basin, of course, wants to play a significant role in that. Just this morning, I was communicating with Jennifer West of California Water Reuse, and she's definitely getting excited about potentially moving forward with a bond package. And of course, with all of the different issues that California faces at this time, you know, water is still a significant issue and still polls extremely high. So it's not likely that you'll see a resiliency bond move forward in this next legislative year that doesn't have a significant portion of funding for water. So I know that we've kind of gone through this on numerous occasions, all the different bills that we were tracking, but I did want to leave you with one final item. Obviously, the elections are bearing down on us at this time. In looking at the elections and the potential results in the state of California, as well as our national elections, West Basin staff wanted to make sure that we provided the board with an excellent overview of those election results and a timely overview. And so I wanted to present this to you today, that I have lined up with Niamel Pappas and Associates to provide their state legislative update at the November committee meeting, the Water Policy and Legislation Committee. We felt it would be timely. I do not anticipate any lingering issues, if you will, after the state elections. I think you'll see clearly that in the legislature, there's likely going to remain a 2/3 majority. We will have an opportunity to go through some of those propositions, but I think that that'll provide an excellent overview at that time. And of course, in the West Basin service area, the delegation, you know, I don't think that there's too many questions there. On the national level, I did ask that BSA join us for our December Water Policy and Legislation Committee. And that was done for a couple of different reasons. One of which, we do believe that there could be some lingering issues after the election. There could be some lawsuits in some of those very, very tight Senate races and ongoing vote tallying. So we will provide a brief overview in November, but we'll wait for a very detailed election overview in December by BSA. And by then, BSA will be able to really shape the discussion for the lame duck session that is likely to take place if, of course, President Trump does lose his bid for re-election. If, of course, he wins, again, you're still going to have that brief session prior to members of the Senate changing over and prior to members of the House possibly changing over. So regardless of the presidential election, we do anticipate some activity within Congress. Did I possibly hear a question?
Any questions from anybody? I heard some noise, but I don't know if anybody had a question. Okay, you can continue, EJ.
So I'll move on with the BSA report. Obviously, last week we were unsure as to whether there would be some sort of COVID relief or some sort of package produced. Leadership in the House has set several deadlines, and you've heard some of the dialogue back and forth, whether the discussions or negotiations were called off completely or whether they should produce something. It's my understanding that today was the latest of the deadlines set by Speaker Pelosi. Again, these things tend to continue on even when we think that they're dead. So we haven't seen too much activity, but we definitely want to make sure that we are tracking it. The House has produced several different packages, and the difference between a $2.2 trillion relief package or a 1.9 has been reported that the administration has authorized. Doesn't seem very significant, but when you look at House members in the Republican caucus, they've made it somewhat clear that there aren't the necessary votes to get something like that out of the House, even at the $1.8 trillion. So I know that VSA has done a great job of tracking this issue, but it seems to be kind of a ping pong match as far as a war of words, but as far as activity goes, we haven't seen that much moving forward. And I did want to highlight, if you look at, I think it's page 4 of this report, actually page 3. If you can scroll down.
Are you talking about the VSA letter?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
President Trump signs executive order creating a water subcabinet. This just happened recently on October 13th. There have been a lot of questions related to the broad or vagueness of the language, but President Trump did issue a sweeping executive order to bolster water infrastructure across the country, including establishing a new interagency subcabinet to streamline decisions. You have heard this in some of his rhetoric and some of his speeches when he's talked about water conservation fixtures as far as flow restrictors and toilets. But you've also heard him refer to issues in the state of California as far as allowing water to run from our rivers into the oceans. So it does appear as though California is kind of the subject of some of those comments being made. So we're going to clearly continue to monitor this. This is somewhat of a new discussion, but I know that it is very important to VSA to kind of get a good grasp of what they hope to accomplish, especially when they talk about streamlining activities. Obviously, the Trump administration has promised streamlined infrastructure programs and offering to really fund infrastructure, but we have not actually seen that when it comes to the funding aspect. So we're continuing to work on that, and I know that VSA, Jeff Bowman, is really dedicated to seeing where this specific effort leads. And last but not least, we are in the final stages of wrapping up our draft letter for our congressional delegation. I do know that our PI team, our public information team, has had the opportunity to draft and edit that letter. And so we feel like we're at that next step of now working with Congressional Member Liu as far as reviewing it and circulating that. So if you have any questions or specific direction on that, please let staff know, and we'll be happy to provide that. So with that, Chairman Houston, that's all I have unless you have any specific questions.
Okay, great. I'll just jump in right away. When was it that we expect to get that letter circulated or out through Congressman Liu's office?
So we're in the final stages of reviewing it in-house, and once that's done or completed as far as the process goes, we would send that back out to Pete Evich. Pete Evich would serve as our liaison with the office of Congressman Liu, and we would get that ball rolling to begin the process of initiating discussions with those offices.
Okay, because the goal is they want this, is it for the next, what is it, calendar year or for the fiscal year? What is the goal again?
So we would be hoping to get a new appropriation. As you'll recall, we were awarded $1 million, although the Army Corps has been working a little bit slow as far as how they're working on their work plan. But what we would do is once we get that letter produced, we would request a meeting with Army Corps of Engineers staff in Washington, D.C. We would do a Zoom call, present them with that letter, and then hopefully ensure that our appropriation is included in their next fiscal year work plan.
Okay, great. And one other question, and then I'll let my colleagues chime in. Right above that, the VSA letter right above the sub-cabinet, I noticed it talks about EPA and David Ross, proposing to create a water reuse team. And my question on this, of course, is this is at the end of this current president's term. And if he is not reelected, do we know what this means going forward at EPA?
Well, I would suggest that if of course, the current president loses his bid for reelection, you will see drastic changes in the EPA. And one issue is there are several different leaders in these different environmental categories from the state of California, including Mayor Garcetti and others, people like Wade Crowfoot, who have taken a very proactive approach to dealing with climate change and climate resiliency. So I would anticipate that the EPA looking very different under a new administration. It's also worth noting that this effort was initiated first by California Water Reuse within the state of California. You'll remember when the Division of Drinking Water was moved underneath the State Water Resources Control Board, there was an effort by California Water Reuse to actually create a division of recycled water. So this is not a new effort. It's just something that, again, translates from California to our federal partners. And I think that if I was to kind of highlight this for anybody else, I would always point out that California, you could talk about the progressive politics, but the ideas and the concepts that begin in the state of California tend to migrate east. And you start to see that in other states, even very conservative states, as they look at how people handle these things. And for there to be a water reuse team on the national level, I think it speaks volumes about what's been happening in the reuse community, but also in the state of California.
Okay, because it is what it is, but it's very unfortunate, of course, that here we are at the end of this 4 years that they really got into this and rolled it out. And I think it was a valiant effort. So I'm no way knocking the effort. I know we've got actually some great partners at EPA on this particular issue, something we can all agree on. So hopefully, if the administration changes over, if Joe Biden wins, this will still be a tremendous priority at EPA, and of course the water reuse community will be right there at the table, because I really think they've done a good job thus far getting it where it is and trying to streamline some of the different duplication of the partners at the federal government level, agriculture and EPA and so on. So hopefully, again, it will at least has a set of precedent, and all the work will not be for nothing. So I think that that'll obviously be one of our big things as we figure out who ultimately wins the election, and then what the new priorities are for the water community in California. So we can already put that onto VSA's list of things to do, because I know that at the end of the day, we're not going to take the foot off the pedal here on water reuse, and really, like you just said, rolling it across the country back to the east. I think we've definitely been leading, and I want to make sure that we keep on moving forward with that. And these other great states are doing some good work. So thank you on that, EJ. Other questions for EJ? Any of my colleagues on the board?
Mr. Chair, just to say to EJ, thank you for that report, and thank you to our consultant for the information this morning.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, and also thank you, EJ, and thanks to both VSA and NPA. I think it's a good idea, by the way, to have them coming to talk to us in person on these calls in the next 2 months, respectively. I think that's great. It'll be very timely. Obviously, ironically, by the time this meeting happens, when is it? Next time is November 17. We may still not know the full results of the national election, quite honestly. So it's going to be really quite a roller coaster ride, I think, in the next handful of weeks leading up to Christmas. And I really don't have anything much on the state level personally either. I think that we all know what transpired this year in Sacramento, and we're going to see how these races shape out, and then kind of go back to the drawing board as the new session comes into place in California. So, all right, well, thank you very much, EJ, a very thorough report, and we will move on to the next item. Patrick, it's item C, it looks like, Metropolitan Water District report for September.
That's true. That's the third action or information item. And again, EJ, you've been busy today, and we've tried to make sure this is as up to date as possible on metropolitan events. EJ?
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick. Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board. Before you do have the Metropolitan Water District report. It does obviously cover all the activities that happened on September 2020 or in September. But we did want to provide one specific update because it did take.
What page in our packet, just so everybody knows what page in our packet?
95.
What was that?
Page 95 is where it starts.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we did provide an update on the election of the MWD chair to a 2-year term beginning January 1st of 2020. Obviously, this is something that we've been tracking and watching very closely. But at the October 13th MWD Board of Directors meeting, a brief overview presentation was given identifying the 2 nominations for the position of chair, and an opportunity for 4 nominations was provided. With no 4 nominations, the 2 nominations were Chairwoman Gloria Gray and Director Adana Ortega from the City of Fullerton. After brief statements were made by both candidates, Chairwoman Gloria Gray was unanimously reelected. As such, Chairwoman Gray will complete her term through December 31st, 2020, and then will begin a new 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2021. So with that, I'd like to congratulate Chairwoman Gloria Gray on her reelection. The other item I wanted to provide an update on, and again, what we tried to do is update on some specific items that happened in committee, and you'll notice that there's a little bit more information here, and we'll try to provide as much information as we can throughout these individual months. But the item related to COVID-19 impacts to MWD and its member agencies, I thought was a very telling report. And we actually included as Exhibit A, I believe, the PowerPoint presentation that was provided in committee. And again, I think it provides a great overview. This began back with the adoption of the biennial budget for fiscal year 2021 and the rate increases that were identified and approved for calendar year 2021 and 2022. When the board approved these, they also made the following directives. They asked that in September 2020 meeting, the board shall review the budget and rates to consider the impacts resulting from COVID-19 crisis, and also asked that staff revisit and consider 6 specific issues for the biennial budget cycle of fiscal years 2021, as well as 2021-22 by August 31st. And this presentation is the initial overview of staff's review. The presentation included an overview of MWD's COVID-19 responses, which included budget cuts, reduced sales projections, and capital improvement expense projections. I'd also noticed the impacts to the MWD member agencies and provided a summary of all cost containment measures taken. The presentation was provided under MWD's board packet item 8-1, and then obviously, as I mentioned, is included in this packet here. One thing to point out when we look at these, you tend to break that down within the Metropolitan Water District family to identify the impacts to its specific member agencies. And I want to utilize West Basin Municipal Water District as a prime example because obviously it's what means most to us. But when we talk about the impacts of COVID-19, obviously some agencies have significant costs or potential delays in projects. We have not experienced really much of the delay per se. But I did want to point out that water retailers are obviously being impacted to a much higher degree than a wholesaler. When West Basin provides its water, we receive payment from our retailers, whether it's an investor-owned utility or a municipal utility. We provide that in an invoice of per acre foot, and they of course pay West Basin Municipal Water District. We don't have the individual delinquencies that you might see in an individual retailer area, and especially when you look at disadvantaged communities or communities that are impacted far more by the COVID-19 crisis and economic impacts. So I wanted to point that out because as you listen to the presentation provided by Metropolitan Water District staff, that seems to be the biggest area of difference between a wholesaler and a retailer is in those delinquencies. And of course, we have not seen that. So I wanted to highlight that after an extensive discussion by the committee and the board gave the following direction: to continue to track COVID-19 impacts to its member agencies with a focus on retail payment delinquencies. If there's an interest from the member agencies to develop a payment deferral program that also exempts penalties or interest for those agencies that record and report significant delinquencies. And this, of course, comes from a municipality standpoint. If they're seeing a high level of delinquencies, for a municipality, you might ask the question, how are they going to pay their bill to Metropolitan Water District? And so really the idea of creating a program that provides some sort of relief is important. And secondly, they've asked that staff bring back any deferral program criteria to the board for review and consideration, monitor water demands, sales, and expenditures, and prepare additional cost containment measures as needed for mid-cycle budget review. And then also maintain the current rates adopted by the board to address the impacts of lower water sales and lower revenues while maintaining current credit ratings. So really it's a matter
We lost you there. You froze up. Let me check in with him real quick.
Sure. It just stated that my audio connection, did I break up there?
Yeah, we lost you just for a minute. You might want to just roll back a couple of sentences.
Well, I was just pointing out that what Metropolitan Water District staff is asking is that its member agencies work to provide any information as far as the need for a deferral program, because that could potentially impact the ability for Metropolitan Water District to continue on with its adopted and approved budget. Moving forward, underneath this board memo, I believe it's packet page 96, you will see that staff, in an effort to provide additional information as to the specific actions taken at Metropolitan Water District, we did provide the specific actions adopted by the Metropolitan Water District Board, but we also provided some backup for each of the action items. So there's additional detail there in case the board members want to read a little bit more. Obviously, in these past years, or excuse me, these past months, we've heard from our general manager, Jeff Keitlinger, that Metropolitan Water District has taken an effort to reduce some of the staff activities, staff presentations. So a lot of the activities that you've seen over the past few months are what we'd call routine discussions, but you are starting to see several of different expenditures related to budget initiatives, and you can see this as agenda item 7-1, Metropolitan Water District requiring the use of revenue bonds in the aggregate principal amount of $500 million. This again is a routine measure as required to utilize those bond expenditures. If you turn it to packet page 97, you'll see that they adopted the 24th supplemental resolution to the master bond resolution, authorizing the issuance of up to $255 million of water revenue bonds. Again, this is just a required step as far as the process goes to reduce those bonds. The next item is awarded $13,419,000 contract for JF Shea Construction to replace the overhead bridge cranes at all 5 CRA pumping plants. This is a significant project, although routine, and of course the way Metropolitan Water District does this work is in phases, but to see the size of those cranes and the work that they're doing is pretty impressive. The bottom item there is to express support for Proposition 16, allows diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. This was an item that was discussed by Jeff Keitlinger at our September caucus meeting. Obviously, a public agency is not able to advocate for a ballot measure, but they can potentially educate on that item. The next item, if you turn the page to packet page 98, They adopted the CEQA determination that the proposed action was addressed in prior environmental documentation and authorized the general manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with DWR to purchase surface water supplies from Yuba County Water Agency consistent with the key terms outlined. Again, Metropolitan Water District is a master at maneuvering water supply with trades and contracts like this. It really, to give them credit and to give their staff credit, they really do these things to maximize the flexibility of Metropolitan Water Districts to not just store water, but plan for drier years in the future. So whenever you see a transaction, you look to see whether it's going to impact them now or provide potential opportunities in the future. And of course, they've done an excellent job in the past. And then last but not least, I'd like to just walk you through the packet page 124 and packet page 126, just to take a look at our supply conditions. I'll actually do the overview based off of packet page 126. You can see on the far left, the 2020 Colorado River supplies. We're at 80% of our full CRA supplies. That is excellent, especially when you look at where we are with our state water project. You can see a very healthy snowpack percent of normal, 106% in the upper Colorado River Basin. 50% runoff forecast looks very good. Of course, that's done in Wyoming. You can see the lower levels in Lake Powell and Lake Mead at 47%, 39% respectively. But as we've all followed these things and tracked them for years, there's a lot of politics that go into the storage amount in both of those lakes and reservoirs. So we look at that as kind of the new norm. If you move over to the center column and you look at the state water project allocation, we continue to be at 20% of table A. You can see that they've really pulled down on Lake Oroville. It's at 46% with 1.63 million acre feet there. And of course, looking at the fact that we are in the latter stage of October, that is extremely normal for this time of year. What we're doing is preparing for rain, and hopefully we get a good rainy season as well as snow, possibly some early snow. And so that begins to fill up as the rainy season begins. Again, you can look at the San Luis Reservoir, very similar at 48%. So we see that as a very healthy sign. And then I think what most people would point to is the Castaic Lake and DVL being 89 and 87% of capacity. And that really is, I think, when you look at the Colorado River allocation and the state water project allocation, that's a sign that we're receiving very ample supplies from both. And I'll take this to the bottom right-hand corner and just point this out once again, the NWD storage reserve levels. And there's nothing that says how healthy we are more than in 2019, the 3.1 million acre feet in storage. That was a record put by Metropolitan Water District, never seen before. Part of it's because of the completion of DVL, years ago. So they didn't have that storage if you look at MWD historically. But once it was completed, we've never had this much storage. And we were able to do and meet that. And it's my understanding that we've actually slightly exceeded it, but we are currently at roughly 3.1 million acre feet of stored water, which is extremely healthy for Metropolitan Water District. They say that when, back when we had the 2.5, they would always tell us that when we were in the midst of that drought, going back into the 2009 levels, and you can see the 1 million acre feet that we had back in 2009. They said that we had, still over a year and a half of just stored water. So at 3.1, you're looking at more than 3 years of stored water for the Metropolitan Water District service area. So we could withstand a very significant drought by doing the right things and continuing to conserve, recycle water. So that 3.1 million acre feet is extremely healthy. So I hope that paints a rosy picture, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Houston. And that's really all I have for the Metropolitan Water District update. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much, EJ, for that report. And it's good to hear we do have a lot in storage, at least down here in the southern part of the state, because I mean, you're probably seeing, like I am, a lot of articles and information right now coming out about this winter that could very well be dry. So it just seems like we are potentially going into a winter that may not have the precipitation that we would love to have. So anyways, at this time, I'll open it up for any questions or comments from my colleagues. President Gray?
Hi, Chair. Are you
Yes.
there?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm here.
I want to ask EJ. EJ, what item number on the board agenda was the board approval for the budget? Do you know? Because I'm looking at your notes and it talks about committee. So what item did the board approve the budget? Do you remember?
So
Yeah, go
in
on.
relation to the September committee and board meeting, that was packet page 8-1
So it was
that they
8-1.
took
Right.
that review of the item. And again, as I'm sure President Gray knows, the board has been very diligent with the Metropolitan Water District staff and requesting staff to continue to track this and return back to the committee and board on these items. And so West Basin staff will obviously be bringing these back as the reports are given to the board.
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's just that in your report, I did not see the actual item that was approved by the board. I see you started at 7-1, and that was under consent. But I know there were other items that are under consent. So, and you gave a very good background report and in terms of what member agencies really need to do when we do the mid-year review, because that's going to be very important that member agencies do track with the other agencies in terms of some of the deficiencies or delinquencies rather from as it relates to payment. So getting information from member agencies is really going to be very important when we do the mid-cycle review. But I wanted to just make note. I would suggest you put in your report the actual item, unless I missed it, that it was 8-1 and what was actually approved by the board, because your report really kind of reflects the committee, even though you said the committee and the board, which the board did chime in. But I think it really should reflect what that actual item was approved by the board. So just a suggestion in terms of making sure we understand exactly what the board approved. And I assume that when you say the two items that you mentioned, it was discussion with the committee and by the board, this is the language that was in 8-1. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is
Right.
the specific language as approved by the committee and then approved by the board.
Yeah, well, make sure I'm suggesting it says it was approved. You said it was discussed, but we need to make sure this is the language that was approved by the board, which you did say, I think, in your verbal report. But it does detail the discussion, and this is actually what the board did approve. It was not changed at the board meeting. This is the actual language, and so that's important because we need member agencies to make sure we get that information back. The other thing I wanted to bring up another, and thank you for the report because it was very comprehensive. I did want to mention the DEI Council, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council, because there was some comments at OP&T committee and also the board meeting that relates to some employee issues. And so I believe our board is aware of the council that was initiated by the general manager and what it includes. I think we've already reported on that, but just to remind you, it does include representatives from the employee resource groups, the bargaining units and management, and I was invited to attend also. We do have a facilitator, which I think is a very good facilitator to help the conversation to move on and to bring some focus to it. And some other things I think are going on as it relates to, I believe, hiring someone to actually do a survey of some of the issues that are of concern there by the employees. I also know that there will be a report that will be given in OP&T monthly in terms of the activity of the DEI Council. And so I'm saying all this, EJ, into the board, that you may want to report on that, because I know that you're online with all the different committees and so forth. So that, I think that would be an interest to our board, and certainly I can chime in, and Harold can too, in terms of our perspective. So I think that should be elevated to the point that you may want to consider including that in your reports monthly. And with that, those are my comments, and thank you for your report this morning.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam President. I actually want to follow up for a moment before I open it back up to my colleagues. I want to make sure two things I understood. So you both were batting around 8-something in a previous meeting, but what was the item and what board meeting was it? September or October? I just want to be clear for the record.
And I apologize because I was looking at the item. So if you look at packet page 95,
okay.
The COVID-19 impacts, this is the September update. So this item relates specifically to the September committee and board meetings. Unfortunately, I just noticed that the packet item 8-1 is not bold like the other items are, and so I should have done that. So this specifically relates to that item, and the presentation that was given in committee by Metropolitan Water District staff is included as attachment A.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it was 8-1 from the September meeting.
Correct. And Chairman Houston, I should point out that if you look at the top of packet page 96, that is, as stated, it says, after extensive discussion in committee and by the board gave the following direction. And these are the specific directives given by the board, those two actions as approved by the board.
Okay, great. And one other question before I open it back up. OP&T committee, are they having a meeting this week? Was there going to be a special meeting, or did I mishear that in the past?
I will look that up right now. I'm not 100%.
I thought I heard them saying something about it last week, like they're going to have a special meeting this week, but when I looked at the website, I did not see an agenda, so maybe I was wrong.
Chair Houston, I can answer that. OPT, it is a scheduled meeting on Tuesday, I believe. The agenda has not been posted yet, though.
Okay, but they're not having a special meeting this week.
No, it's Tuesday during the day that we have executive session. I think that's next Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I think it would be
It's
that day,
October
but not
27th.
this week.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I just misunderstood.
But EJ can confirm it, but that's what I believe is going to happen. We have not posted the agenda yet for that meeting, but it will be a special meeting.
Chairman Houston, that meeting, as President Gloria Gray just mentioned, is on Tuesday, October 27th. It's at 2 p.m. And this, of course, is the day of the executive committee, but they do on occasion have a specific special committees or committee meetings. So there is a pretty full day on that Tuesday. So you'll have integrated resources plan special committee meeting beginning at 9 a.m., a Bay Delta committee meeting at 11 a.m. The executive committee is always at noon, and then an audit and ethics committee at 1 p.m. And then, of course, the special organization personnel and technology committee, the OPT committee at 2 p.m. No agendas have been posted.
Okay. So that's what they did. They called it a special meeting that day. Okay. I just maybe had my dates wrong. Okay. Gotcha.
Chair Houston, I have to step away for just a couple of minutes. I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, now let me open it back up to the other colleagues, and then I might have a couple of other questions. But any other board member at this time have a question or a comment for EJ on the reports? Okay. I want to ask another question, EJ. I really want to say thank you for including that finance committee packet. And the question I had, you may not know the answer, but on the slide 6, which was from page 105 of our packet, slide 6, where they had the results of this survey they did of member agencies. I'm at least going to ask, and I don't know if you know, but I do see that, of the member agencies, it looks like, there's ones that are having some issues. At the end of the day, though, it says 3 of them have substantial financial impacts. Do we know what 3 member agencies those are?
We do not.
Okay. Okay, and the next thing too, I see right above it, number 9, it says budget shortfall due to non-payments. So obviously, these member agencies, whomever they are, that must be part of what they're seeing, even on item 1, delinquency rate increase. So obviously, there's certain people not paying their bills. It's affecting cash flow. I understand that as member agencies, most all of them will probably, of course, pay the Met bill, but that's going to eat into other revenue that they would be using for something else. Obviously, mostly probably deferred maintenance or capital improvements, which you see right here, deferred, reduced capital improvements due to COVID. So there's 4 at least agencies and cost cuts. So I'm glad that Met did this survey, and at least we can get an idea of what's going on. I just saw an article in the last couple of days talking about how the state of California really doesn't know how much agencies across the state are faring because they don't have the data. Some other states have been doing a pretty good job of getting data. We haven't, and apparently the Water Resources Control Board is not getting all this data coming in per se. So I just saw that recently. And so at the end of the day, we all know there's a lot of questions, but even in our own service area, we have our cities that pay the water bills who have downed revenues. So they're probably going to pay us, but they're going to be cutting back on other things. And at the end of the day, they're going to look at a survey like this, I would assume, and say, we're struggling. So I guess that's where at least Met's going to look going forward at some sort of programs to potentially help member agencies that are struggling. Is that what I understood?
That's correct. It's a matter of determining whether it's necessary to offer those programs. And again, you look at West Basin Municipal Water District, an agency that has individual retailers that cover very affluent areas as well as some that cover disadvantaged communities. What we typically see is that both in the West Basin service area, they pay their water wholesaler, but they are probably being impacted by individual delinquencies. So as you mentioned, within their internal budgets and such, there could be potential impacts. If you look at the Metropolitan Water District family, there are several municipalities that are member agencies that could possibly be impacted, including LADWP, the city of Torrance, the city of Santa Ana. There are several that could potentially be impacted by the lack of payment. Now, whether that impacts their complete bottom line or whether they're able to plan around it, like if you see what Metropolitan Water District is doing, where they're trying to curtail their cuts or curtail their expenses. There are obvious savings within the COVID-19 world, whether it be through travel or whether it be through programs that aren't able to be implemented. There are opportunities for savings, so it's just a matter of determining whether a deferment plan for its member agencies is necessary.
Okay, very good. And then I did have just a couple of other questions because, I do understand most of this report, of course, is based on last month, and so obviously this month things happen. But I was listening, of course, to the meeting, and there was, during public comment, there were a number of folks who called in talking about an issue I really wasn't aware of at Met that apparently has been happening. This, a lot of issues with workplace harassment and sexual harassment. And apparently a survey had been done, and there's like a very high level of distrust or something like that in the 40-something% at Metropolitan for employees to report issues, which I find it, obviously this is very, very concerning to me and people, almost anybody, it wouldn't matter who you are. This is very concerning, and I had not heard of all this. And so I was caught by surprise, but I think that we as West Basin need to understand what's going on. So, we haven't been told this before. I hopefully expect that you guys will keep us abreast. And the other thing was that somebody mentioned on those callers about the DEI Council. you know, and so obviously even that has some controversies. So I don't know if the Met directors want to chime in on that, but can anybody have any comment on this? Director Williams or Director Gray? Okay, well, what I heard was that one of the groups, this women's caucus group or whatever, they're actually going to boycott this DEI council because they're very upset. And so, you know, we'll see what happens. But what I would like is when we get our next reports, please, you know, can you guys talk to us about this and tell us what's going on? And then my other thing is I saw that there turned out to be a very close vote on the site's reservoir, and the voting to authorize an additional $5 million for planning, which I think we lightly touched on it at our last caucus meeting. We really didn't talk about it heavily. We talked about the toilet rebate or multifamily toilets, which obviously looks like that went through with flying colors. But this site's reservoir was a tight vote. And, you know, our directors voted in favor of it. So we didn't really talk about it heavily, but I would like to hear any understanding or rationale as to West Basin's position on the site's reservoir. Director Williams or Director Gray? Okay. So maybe next month we can talk about that, but you know, it wasn't something that we discussed, and I see that it was a very tight vote. So any other questions from colleagues or comments? Okay. I think, and I know, I guess Director Gray, she stepped away or something, but Director Williams has nothing to add. But I think that that shows kind of what we experience at West Basin with understanding the Met director's representation of us. So I'm going to move on to the next item, the last item, item D. Pat.
Thank you, Chairman Houston. So this is the final item on the information calendar today. This item stemmed from, I think, originally discussions at the Water Policy and Ledge Committee back on September 17th. That led to a report by staff based on some requests. On September 28th, and then there was some ultimately a subsequent request from President Gray to have our general counsel provide a summary of some of the background on Director Kwan's tenure on the board until it came to a halt back in October in 2007. So I have Steve O'Neill on the line here. Stephen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Your summary.
Yeah, Patrick, and kind of categorize it. I was asked to review a cause hearing that took place in 2007 that was requested by the board at that time. As you may know, metropolitan representatives serve either at the pleasure of the board or on a fixed 4-year term. At that time, Director Kwan was on a fixed 4-year term, and the board instructed my office to look at attendance records and meeting compensation records. A cause hearing was heard, took place in March of 2007, and there was an evidentiary hearing, and the board at the time determined cause did exist to replace Director Kwan on the Met board. And that concludes my summary.
Okay. So what are we supposed to do with this, Pat?
I'm back on the line, Chair.
Okay. Well, you know what? Well, Carol, Director Kwan, you wanted to say something, but Director Gray is here and she put this on here. So who should go first? Who wants to go first?
I will let Director Gray go first, please.
We'll let Director Gray go first. You put it on
Right.
here. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board how this all came up. There was some discussion at the last meeting, I believe it was, about the role and the performance of the representatives to MWD board from West Basin, and specifically, I think Director Kwan was expressed some concern about how we what the process was in terms of informing the board and the board's input. And I think at the last meeting, it was presented the different ways in which board members are informed and an opportunity for board members to express their input and to determine, what direction they did want to give the the representatives or not. And so out of that came the fact that I asked the question, what was the process that was done when Director Kwan was the representative on the board. And so I think we've had some reports on that. And then the last time I recall, it did talk about Director Kwan's performance as a rep on the board. And there was a document that spoke to why she was removed from the board. And so this is information to support why she was removed and what the process was during that time. And as I recall, I don't think there was any formal process in terms of how representatives were interacting with the board. And so this shows Director Kwan's performance and why she was removed. And I still have the question of what process is she trying to get to in terms of wanting the representatives to perform based on what she did or did not do when she was the board rep.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Kwan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Director Williams.
and I had to step away for a bit here, but I'm just wondering on the background of this agenda item, did the general counsel speak to this italicized print that's on the agenda?
Yes, he spoke to it. Yes, he presented it. Yes.
Was it verbatim as written here?
Well,
Or was it just summarized?
No, I summarized.
Mr. Chair, I would like.
I'm the chair. Excuse me, I'm the chair. Can I run the meeting?
Well, I'm sure I did ask you.
I was going to ask you, Director Williams. Director Williams, do you want him to read it verbatim? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, in the spirit of transparency.
No. Okay, Steve, if you don't mind, can you read the whole statement?
Sure. Director Kwan was originally appointed by the West Basin Board to the Metropolitan Board in 2001. In 2006, she was appointed to a fixed 4-year term on the Metropolitan Board pursuant to Ordinance Number 06-35. Per the Metropolitan Act, a director serving a 4-year term can only be removed for cause. The cause hearing focused on 2 issues: whether Director Kwan was attending enough Metropolitan meetings to adequately represent West Basin, and whether Director Kwan requested per diem compensation for meetings she did not attend. In March 2007, the West Basin Board conducted an evidentiary hearing concerning whether Director Kwan should be removed for cause. My office was tasked with reviewing Director Kwan's attendance records at Metropolitan Board and committee meetings. We work with Metropolitan staff, Dawn Chin, to collect and review the minutes of the meetings that took place during Director Kwan's time on the Metropolitan Board. The review revealed that from October 2001 to December 2006, she missed 88 of the 217 committee meetings she was assigned, an absence rate of 40.5%. The district also reviewed the certificates of attendance submitted by Director Kwan for per diem compensation. The review determined that on numerous occasions, Director Kwan requested and received compensation for meetings at which she was not present or which did not appear to have taken place. After a full evidentiary hearing with both sides represented by counsel, the West Basin Board found Director Kwan's actions constitute a sufficient cause for removal. She was removed from her seat and replaced in March 2007. That's the end of the quote.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Williams?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Director Kwan.
Thank you very much. Sure. So did anyone ask who replaced me after I was remove. Of course, this is another vicious political motivated attack. All right, Director Gray removed me, and then she put herself on the map board until now. And then, you know what? I get along, like I said last time, we agree to disagree. I get along. You know what? And this is another election attack right now to bring this up. Okay, Director or Chairman Houston, will you allow me, a little bit more time to express my feeling right now? I have not talked about this openly or publicly, I guess, ever. All right.
Yes,
So
you have the floor.
thank you. You know what? At 2:07, all right, they had this investigation. They spent, Steve there, correct me if I'm wrong, they spent public dollar. I forgot, I had the number then, $150,000 or $200,000 in this particular investigation of me attending meeting and not attending meeting, okay? And of course, I have to use my own attorney, my money, which is voted by the board that I cannot, since even though, listen to this, even though I was accused of something that I did on the West Basin board, right? They voted, Director Gray voted not to pay for my attorney fee, which I pick up the bill, which is okay. And they told me to, and remember this now, Nago was there. He told me, Carol, the board would drop the case if you resign from the map board. They offered me that, okay? I did not take that. I'm not gonna sit here and listen to them accusing me of something that I really did not do. The investigation went on, and Gilbert Ivy was still there then. And back then we used a key card to enter the building. So my attorney actually tried to investigate, if I'm in the building, I went to the meeting, I went in there, key card. They actually did discover some of those meetings. I would, some of those days that I reported per DM, I was in the office. And sometime, I don't know, back then when you attend map meeting, you're back there in the audience. Sometime I was still working. I used the phone a lot. I sit in the back. I don't know if I guess whoever's taking attendance, take attendance. All right. But it proved that I was in the building. But then a few meetings they cannot find. You know why? Because remember now, this is 10 years ago. They changed security company and they don't have the record. They don't have the record of who go in and out the key card way back then. So a few meeting was not accounted for. All right. So anyway, they found cause to remove me. I did not take the offer from NAGO. The whole thing is Director Gray want to be on the map board. Okay. If I resign, no problem. Okay. And NAGO could be the witness of that. He asked me a few times, Director Guan, don't go into a dogfight. It's okay, let it go. The whole thing will go away. We'll come to that. No, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and let them put that on me. And now they found out. And oh, one more thing. With whatever happened, they took the whole thing to the DA's office, try to file a criminal act. The DA did. That was Steve Cooley's office. They did do an investigation. They know. And oh, by the way, that made me remember. Patrick, our general manager, I had requested you to find out, the letter from the DA's office on the October 5th. You wrote me back October 14th. First, why is it though? You never responded anything I asked in a timely manner. Hey, Director Kwan, we'll look into that. I never received a response that you got my email or you don't get my email. So I got an email on the 14th that you cannot find them. Or Steve's office cannot find them. I don't know. Okay. So I put a call into my attorney's office. Okay. It's a record that dated back that long ago. And I remember that if Director Don Deere is still on the phone call. Director D is the first one that saw the letter. He's the one that told me. Actually, I walked into a board meeting or something. It's been so long ago. He said, "Hey, congratulations, Carol." I said, "What?" He said, "I got a letter from the DA's office. They said they found no merit on the case." Okay. And he said, at that time, I really remember what he said because it's a big thing to me, right? Director D actually told me they think the DA's office still think that I was the president then. He said, but at that time, I don't remember who the president was, president of the board, okay, of West Basin board, but they still sent me the letter. So that letter actually still exists, should be in the file. I don't know why Steve's office or our office cannot find it. Maybe you should ask Charlene Jensen. And also, maybe we should go forward a little bit, 2010, 2011. I don't exactly remember the month or the year that this come out, this letter from the DA's office that excited me because they said I remember the tour because the tour was set by Director D. They found the case had no merit. So why bring it back? I still wonder why bring it back after 13 years, right? No one heard me mention this ever again, even though I was found no merit in the case. And even Director Ed Little, before his passing, we make up, he was talking to me. He said, "Carol, I'm so sorry this all happened." I put it behind my back. And now, because of the election year, or because we don't agree on something, I got attacked. I use this word all the time. Very, very, very disappointing. Okay, Director Gray, you spend $150,000 or $200,000 of public dollar to investigate me, to remove me from the MET board, okay, way back, because I did not take your offer to walk away voluntarily, and you have the nerve to take this out? What, embarrass me? Embarrass me? Very, 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 very disgusting, unethical, with all this vicious attack from you and Director Williams, okay? My God, 24 years almost I served the board. This is embarrassing for the West Basin. And I'm still looking for that letter. And then here, Patrick, I'm going to tell you right now here, please go back and look at the record for 2010, 2011, and please kindly do this. Next time, if I request something, let me know. I got the email, I look into the case, and like I said many times, a common courtesy. No, I did not hear you. Submitted the request up to October 5th. I did not hear anything until October 14th. Almost 9-10 days later. Well, tell me about favoritism. Tell me you guys don't count votes. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And it doesn't work on me. If I have to fight, I still would fight now. I'm not elected by my constituent to be here, to be insulted, to be disrespected by you guys. All right? Thank you. Thank you, Director Houston.
Okay, thank
Director
you.
Houston,
Yes.
I have a response
Sure.
first.
Director.
Thank you very much. It's unfortunate that my colleague on the board misrepresents, and I won't say is untruthful, but totally misrepresents issues, and they're not facts. First of all, this issue was brought up by her. She was the one that questioned and I'll be inclusive, Director Williams' performance on the board as representing West Basin. And so out of that conversation, I asked what when she was the Met director. And so that kind of created all the background information. She's the one that initiated this response. It is not political, and for her to make the comment is kind of it's unusual. It's kind of laughable because uh, this director is the one who sent a letter to the mayor about the fact that she didn't support one of her board members running for chair for whatever reason, and the reason was unfounded. It really didn't make sense, and that's why it was a discussion as to, does the board want a process? And we need to have a process in terms of how representatives should perform, right? So the things that she has said is so unfounded. It makes no sense what Director Kwan is saying. Uh, the reason why she was removed from the board was not my doing, was her doing. She's the one that took the action. It was a fair process, and she was found to be removed for cause because of her doing. It was not my doing. The records that MWD kept, MWD is a valid organization, and what they found was that she was absent, I believe it said, over 40% of the time. And so there's no question about the credibility of what MWD presented, and there's no question about the hearing that she had with her attorney and certainly West Basin. And, what she said about the cost for the investigation, that was a board issue. And I hope she's not revealing anything that was in closed session. I really don't know what all that meant, but I caution her to be careful about what she says because there is information that cannot be revealed that was in closed session related to this particular subject. And so, but I do recall, I think I recall the motion to remove her, I think Don Deere may have been president, but I think Director Deere made the motion. It was not my motion. It was not my initiation. She was removed, and I think it was unanimous for the other 4 board members that voted for her. So this is not political. This is just factual. And this is something that she initiated herself. I don't think she realized what it would reveal, but she initiated it. And so, in terms of transparency, we talk about transparency, then this is transparency. And one should not be afraid of it, but one should be factual about it. And that's why I always defer to the attorney and to the GM for records so that we can know what has happened. But, I would like to really move forward in terms of if there's a concern about how representatives should interact with their board, we should have that discussion. And if it's valid, some valid concerns about how you want any of us who represent West Basin or Met Board to perform in terms of interaction and feedback, then we should develop a process, not to criticize with no suggestions about let's do something different, because that was never brought to me or I believe Director Williams about doing something different. It was just, you didn't do it, but what didn't you do? And so that's what generated this whole conversation. Director Kwan brought this on herself. She's the one initiated it. And there's no political movement. There's no attack. It's, she's not a victim. No one has attacked her. These are all facts. And so people should be responsible for their actions. And so, with that said, I think the board does need to, if the board feels there's a need to have a formal process, and we should move forward with doing that. But this was brought on by that, by her initiation of the discussion about her concern about what I didn't do. And the question was, well, what did you do? And this is what generated all of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other directors or Director Kwan, anybody, any final comments, thoughts?
Thank you, Director. Go ahead. I'll let you speak first.
Okay, thank you, Director Kwan. I don't want to talk about this anymore. My colleague Kwan seems to always cry woe me when she runs into her own nonsense. And I can tell you some things about this poor little director who had people picking on her for political reasons. But I'm not going to say that. And she's up for re-election. I'm not. And I know when I was up for re-election, she did some things to me. So, and, but I would say that if I had a letter that would clear me of something, you know, whether it was not illegal or immoral or unethical, if I had that letter from a high authority, I would have several copies of that I can lay my hands on right now. So I would like to say this to my colleague: if you have a letter that clears you, why don't you bring it in? I mean, if you don't have a copy of it, it should be a shame on you. And Houston, thank you for allowing me to say that. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay,
Thank you.
Director Kwan.
Steve, I really need your help now to look for the letter. Remember, we had this conversation before. All right?
Yeah, Director Klein, I can tell you my recollection, again, this is 13 years ago. I was instructed to provide all the materials from the hearing to the DA's office. That was done. And after that, my office had no involvement in the matter. That's really the district attorney's decision. And the referral is not from me or my office, it was from the district. So I remember at some point there was, you know, nothing, as far as I recall, nothing ever got filed by the district attorney's office, which would of course indicate they chose not to file a case. But I don't recall receiving any notice of that formally. I suspect that such a letter would have gone to the district staff. I've been through all of my files, and all my files concern the hearing. And it's an entire box of files, by the way, of all the committee minutes, board minutes, and then all the evidence and briefings that were prepared for the hearing. But I will look again, and I'll have that file reviewed again to see if there's anything in there.
Thank you, appreciate that. And then Pat, will you kindly do that? Look at the file in the West Basin file, I think going back 20, what did I just?
2011.
Yes, please do. All right, I'm sure it's not
Yeah.
2012. So
And
do that.
if I may say so, sorry.
I actually will go through my own file too. Like I said, this was 13 years ago. But yeah, I actually did put all this unpleasant stuff behind the director Gray brought it up and want to talk about that. And I do want to find that letter to show how vicious, what a vicious attack that was, taking the whole thing to the DA's office, to Steve Cooley's office. And they have them come to my house and took my Mac computer and took all my files, if I have any criminal acts. Now think about that. Imagine that, people. Imagine that. And this is by the direction of the board then. By the board then. You know, just because someone wants to be on the mat seat to replace me. So that's what I'm going to say. And by the way, Director Gloria Gray, you've been on the mat board for 10, 12 years now. If you think any change have to be made, why don't you do so? Why you ask me? I'm not on the mat board. I'm not the mat rep that's supposed to come back to West Basin to report. Why you point the finger at me? I was gone. You were there the longest time. Okay, 12 years? Why don't you do something about the reporting? Why turn around and point a finger at someone that's not even on the mat board? You would be sent West Basin to the mat board. Don't do that. You think about pointing fingers? Yeah, please don't do that. Thank you, Director Houston.
Director Houston, I really think that Director Kwan is confused about a lot of things, but let's move on. I mean, I don't even think her comments are even relevant. She's so confusing about issues, but let's move on. I think, you know, maybe we can discuss whether or not at some point this board through your committee would like a more formal process in terms of how input can be given to the representatives. So maybe we can have that another day on the agenda to discuss that, because I do think Director Quan is either confused or just making statements that are so untrue. So, and just for the record, that the DA's involvement was not at the, certainly wasn't initiated by me. So I don't even know what that means, what she's saying. But I would recommend that if the board wants to talk about a more formal process, that we can, maybe at another date on the agenda.
Uh,
Sure.
Chairman
All right, Chair.
Houston.
Yes. Okay, and I will wrap it up soon, but yes, go ahead, Director Kwong.
Thank you. That's very insulting, Director Gray. I'm confused. I'm talking about my own issue. I'm confused. I'm very confusing. I'm so glad all these meetings now are being audio recorded. Wow, how disrespectful. How confused am I? This thing happened to me. Okay, it's actually happened. Okay, Steve just said that he took the whole thing to the DA's office. I don't know who initiated that. Steve did. It must be by the board. I'm not confused. Okay, don't be disrespectful. You don't agree what I said is okay. All right, don't do that.
Director Houston, my comment had to do with her asking what did I do. So please, let's just move on. That was the confusing part of her comments, but let's move on.
Okay.
Please.
Thank
you.
Let me put my final comment on two items. One is, you know, at the end of the day, the whole thing is disrespectful. This whole thing is disrespectful all the way around. But quite frankly, Director Williams, you said some disrespectful things even in this meeting. You know, calling Director Kwan a poor little director and saying certain things that just was very insulting. And the irony of all of this is we just had an ethics committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and we're going to add new language into our admin code that deals with that type of language. So I think we all need to take a step back in how we talk about each other in these public meetings. I personally find it very demeaning that you said that about a colleague in this public meeting. Now, separately, I will also take issue that the way this evolved or got to us was because it was a conversation, I think about 1 or 2 months ago in this committee, and I mentioned it as the chair, that we don't seem to get representation and input to our Met directors. And I said it should be a topic at another time in the future when we could actually dive into it or do it in, you know, in a way that we actually studied it, or let's put on the agenda, let's get some background. And then what happened was it was put on last month's board meeting by President Gray. And so all of a sudden the item was there to talk about something so quickly when it was just an idea, a thought, a concept that I said, in the future, we should have a holistic discussion about this. Instead, somebody threw it onto a board meeting agenda, and then it was like, all of a sudden we have to have the conversation right now at a board meeting last month. And then lo and behold, this situation erupted, and then this got put on this agenda, which ultimately this really it's not helpful for any of us. It is the history, it happened, yes, it's transparent, but you know, the point is that we should be, I agree with you, Chairwoman Gray, we should have a discussion amongst ourselves at some point in the future to figure out the best way for the Met directors to represent the full board. But just throwing it on the agenda at the board meeting level last month and then turn around and then have this item by itself, that's just not productive or helpful. So I would suggest, and I'm not rushing this, we need to get through the next couple months. It's got the holidays, there's elections happening, there's a lot of other activity. I think in the new year, this board should have a productive dialogue of how we can work with our Met directors for representation. So that would have been much better than the way this happened this last 3 or 4 weeks. So that's all I want to say about it. But I think that, you know, the disrespect amongst each other has just gotten out of control at this board. And the funniest thing is we literally had this conversation at Ethics Committee. We're going to put some language in. But, you know, Director Williams, you need to be very careful in what you say and how you say it. We all need to be very careful in what we say and how we say it. And I just, you know, and, you know, I'm just blown away by the way my colleagues treat each other on this board.
Well, we learned it from you.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Right.
Well, thank you, Director Williams. You know what, really, I appreciate that. And, you know, by the way, there has been some things said that could be other closed session things that were out there in the world. So, you know, just know that it's not like, you know, apparently things we do in closed session are not secrets. But all that being said, you know what? I think that we're done with this discussion. I would say President Gray, as we get into the new year, whomever becomes the president, that should probably be what we talk about, is like a retreat item, you know, a real workshop, and look at what other agencies do and how we can work better with our Met directors.
Yeah. Chair Houston, could I just make a last comment, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I think we should really kind of, well, I use this as set the reset button. I think we you know, need to kind of reset the button and kind of start fresh, if you would. You know, it could be because of the pandemic, and we're conducting business in an extraordinary different way, and perhaps, I don't know if that's part of it, just not being able to see people in person and have that social interaction. I think that, you know, that's part of it. But I think we should set the reset button and start anew, and just start treating everyone with respect, and get through this election. Or the election's coming up, and that's always kind of a different period of time. So, you know, the election is in a few weeks, and of course the end of the year is coming up soon, and so we should just kind of make it through the rest of the year with being respectful as we can, and being as factual as we can, and just doing the business of the district, and is the best way that we can, because we're there to serve the public and represent the public in making some key decisions about water. And so I think we need to focus on that, and just kind of take a deep breath. I know staff is listening, and maybe some of the public is listening, and you know, it's just extraordinary times right now, and so there's issues with everyone. I mean, some of us are facing losses in our family, and some are facing economic issues and other things that impact us, and so that's brought into what we do. And so I would encourage all of us to kind of take a breath and just kind of breathe, and just come back with a refreshed look, attitude, or behavior, that they want to do things differently and work with each other. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other comments of any kind? Well, actually, no, let's do this. Let's move from this item. We'll get to our director comments. So do we have any closed session, Patrick?
No, there's no closed session, Chairman.
Okay. So now director comments, any future agenda items, any final comments, board members?
My final comment would be thank you to staff today, thank you to the public, and thank you for my colleagues, and we just move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm looking forward to the board retreat. Thank you.
Okay. Director Kwan?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. No comment. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you, staff, for the presentation. And again, thank you. And I guess I don't know if I should apologize for what you call, to the staff for have to put up with our outcry, I think, or mine. But thank you, though. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Deere, anything?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you know, these meetings unfortunately have been, there's a lot of good that happens in them, and then lately there's just been a lot of back and forth and tension. And I am in agreement with you, Madam Chair, that we need to do a reset. We need to come together. We need to get better. So I think that we can do that. This has been a very hard year, and also a year where comments have been said, things have been said, people have interrupted, things have been said under folks' breath. And it's really, quite frankly, again, some very insulting things have been said. And at the end of the day, you know, Director Williams brought it to the Ethics Committee. It was agendized to change the language of our code. That's going to be on the meeting at the end of the month. So maybe we will look at that different as we move forward once that's passed, assuming it passes. But I think that we have a lot of work to do amongst ourselves to get better. So that being said, I thank you, staff, and EJ did a tremendous job. And I know that I put him on the spot with some hard questions, but he did a great job. And also, I want to say thank you, Pat and staff, for, you know, really stepping up on the Met reporting that I had asked for in the last 2 months. I appreciate that. And I think that we continue to get good, timely reports as Met meetings happen, and then what we get, you know, that information shared to West Basin, as well as our caucus, those caucus meetings. Okay. So with that, our next meeting is scheduled of this committee for November 17th, 2020. I want to say thank you to everyone for participating, including Mr. Cadwallader. And we will see you all later. Stay safe and stay healthy. This meeting's adjourned.